In a few moments, you will have an experience which will seem completely real. It will be the result of your subconscious fears transformed to your conscious awareness. You have 5 seconds to terminate this tape. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome to another We Are So Back Wednesday, another Wednesday live podcast for BG-Cast here. Well, guys, I want to thank all of the new subscribers and followers over on YouTube and Rumble. Thanks for popping in and checking me out. It's good to see you all here. Thanks for being a part of the BG-Cast fam. And, I look forward to having you along on this ride as we learn together, as we break down these very interesting topics. We have a very interesting topic tonight, nonetheless. But, I just want to explain something real quick for everybody. I'm sure a lot more people have noticed I've been a little bit more fiery lately. I've been a little bit more, feeling the angst and, that comes with a lot of these energies that are coming in at this point in time, this shift that we're currently undergoing. And, I'm trying not to get a chip on my shoulder about a couple of things. I'm doing pretty good about that. But the one thing I just want to leave everybody with before we get started on this show tonight is during your spiritual evolution, this wonderful spiritual dance that we're all on, especially this awakening in general, you're going to go through these periods of disillusionment, and you're going to make some very interesting, for a lack of better words, instances where you're going to see things in a way that you haven't seen them before. You're going to see these people that you looked up to who kind of, helped you with the early stages of your awakening. And you're going to realize that a lot of them think they're too good to sit down and break bread with the very community that looks up to them. So I'm not going to name names. I am not going to throw people under the bus, but I'm just preparing you guys. As you grow, you're going to start to see things. You're going to start to experiencing this disillusionment at a very high level. So don't be let down. Don't be disappointed. That's the best advice I can give anybody when it comes to this. Just keep yourself open and understand that real ones are there. Real ones exist. I like to think I'm a real one, and I know I will never point you in any direction, and I don't think I'm too good to sit down with any of you guys and break bread with you. But Kyle, I hear you, man. Work's been kind of crazy lately. But yes, I will email you. I apologize about all that. But nonetheless, let's kind of get into this topic. I don't know why this is still kind of viewed as taboo. I don't know why. When we bring this topic up, you can kind of see it in people's faces. You can kind of see it in their mannerisms, their actions, things like that. And I don't understand why it's taboo, because that's why we need to talk about this. I mean, I know not everybody sees it as taboo, but this is something we need clarification on in the conscious collective and in the spiritual community. Because I feel like there's a lot of different directions. There's a lot of different opinions. There's a lot of different perspectives on how this should be, what should be done. And what I'm going to try to do here tonight for everybody is I'm going to try and give you all some clarification on this, because we have people on either end of the spectrum, saying this is bad, you should minimize this is this, and this, a sacred act, which I don't disagree with. And then you have people on the other side of the conscious collective who are into things like polyamory and free love and all of that. And what am I talking about here? I am talking about sex and spirituality. Yes, the dreaded, not really dreaded. It's a great thing. We shouldn't be looking at it this way. Although, when we look at the manosphere today and their perspective on it, we can see why sex in a lot of ways has been getting a bad rap. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying sexual deviancy is a good thing. I'm not saying, there's not a lot of sexual exploitation in the world today. I'm not saying any of that, but like I said, what I'm going to try to do is give you guys some clarification tonight. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how each different spirituality and religion views sexuality. We are going to be talking about the different sides of the spectrum, all the way from celibacy to polyamory and free love. We're going to talk about healthy sexual expression. We're going to talk about how your kundalini and your creative energy are intertwined with your sexual energy. I actually learned myself they are not one and the same exactly, but they are intertwined. They do work with each other. And we're going to talk about how sacred that energy is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break down the clarification on what could potentially be the right road with sex and spirituality. And one thing I think you're going to come to find is that the answer is very subjective. So nonetheless, let's get into it, guys. So let's take a look at sex and spirituality as a whole and what the general consensus is on sex and spirituality. So let me pull up this page right here. So yeah, this is what we're going to be getting into. And I'm just going to go with this for just a second, just to kind of bring it up to you guys here. So we have spirituality and sex can be viewed in various ways, from seeing sex as a natural expression of life force energy to exploring its potential as a spiritual practice or a path to enlightenment. Some traditions like Hinduism and Taoism view sex as a way to channel energy and connect with the divine, while others see it as a potential distraction from spiritual growth. So we have sex as a natural expression. Some see sex as a fundamental part of human existence, a natural expression of life force energy that can be a source of joy and connection. Don't disagree with that there. This perspective often emphasizes the importance of respecting and celebrating sexual expression, as it is a part of who we are as beings. Absolutely. For some, engaging in sex can be a way to deepen connection with a partner and experience a sense of unity. And, we do have sex as a spiritual practice. We're going to get into that. We're not going to dive into that just yet, but we have sex as a potential distraction, which one of the things I'm going to say about this is yes, it can be. Being a man, at a time before I was on my spiritual evolution, yes, sex was a distraction, most certainly. And that's something we're going to kind of get into a little bit later in this show. We're going to be talking about, how to not have it be a distraction and what healthy sexual attraction is, at least in my opinion. But yes, if all you're focusing on is sex and, chasing your next piece of tail, your next piece of ass, whatever it might be, that's going to distract you from progress in your life. That's going to distract you from growing in your life if all you're thinking about is sex. And, hypersexuality is a thing. It does exist in a lot of neurodivergent people also as well. But yes, it can definitely be a distraction if it's not gone about in a healthy way. So, nonetheless, we have in some spiritual traditions, like certain forms of Christianity, may view sex as a potential distraction from spiritual growth, or even a sin if not practiced within the confines of marriage. And one thing I'm going to say about Christianity, and you guys have known me on this show for a while, how I feel about the Bible and how I feel it's been altered, it's been doctored. Okay, I personally think that means don't have sex unless you're in love. In today's day and age, it's unrealistic with everything that's going around us and what's everything that's going on within us as a collective society. Waiting till you're married to have sex is a very rare thing. And not saying that it's not impossible. A lot of people still do it. But at a realistic standpoint, you're most likely going to have sex before you're married. I know a lot of us have. So that's just something I want to add in there. I don't think it is sex before marriage. I think it should be don't have sex unless you're in love. And we're going to get into why that is the case too a little bit later. So then we have this perspective often emphasizes the importance of self-control and discipline in one's sexual life, as it can be seen as a powerful force that needs to be managed carefully. Some argue that focusing on sexual pleasure can lead to a detachment from higher spiritual goals or a sense of emptiness. I couldn't disagree with that either. Then we have sex as a way to transmute energy. And look at the first one, guys. Some spiritual paths, like Kundalini Yoga, view sex as a way to transmute sexual energy into higher forms of consciousness and creativity. Absolutely. So this is something I'm a profound believer of. This is why in Kundalini Yoga, we work with our Mula Band and we work with our lower triangle, because when we have a balanced lower triangle, we can actually transmute that sexual energy into our higher centers and use it for creative purposes or higher purposes. This isn't actually a real thing. You can experience it if you do try Kundalini Yoga. And of course, you guys know me. I'm a spokesperson for Kundalini Yoga. I think everybody should start doing it. I think if everybody did it, the way we look at mental health and physical health care would completely dissolve, because we would have a natural holistic system to address our emotional and physical health issues. But nonetheless, let's keep going. And then we have, in this perspective, sexual energy is seen as a potent force that can be channeled and transformed into spiritual power without a doubt. Techniques like Qigong and sexual transmutation are used to cultivate this energy and connect with the divine. The balance between spirituality and sexuality. Many spiritual paths recognize the importance of finding a balance between one's sexual nature and one's spiritual aspirations. This balance may involve integrating sexuality into a broader spiritual life, finding ways to express one's sexual energy in a way that is aligned with one's values, or exploring different ways of engaging with sexuality that are in tune with one's spiritual path. Ultimately, the integration of spirituality and sexuality is a personal journey, and individuals may find different approaches that work best for them. So I want you guys to look at this, okay? Because this is the one thing that I kind of get a little bit tired of in the conscious collective. We have people who think they have it all figured out, and their answer is the only right answer. You must do things this way, or else you're straying away from the divine, or you must do things this way, or else you're straying away from the divine. And I'm here to tell you that you can look at these people and politely tell them to fuck off, because in all reality, what you're going to come to find is that this answer is in a lot of ways really subjective. But like I said, we're going to do clarification on it. We're going to go through this all, so each of you out there can make an educated decision on what works for your alignment and your values, instead of just taking everything you see at face value. So nonetheless, let's kind of dive in a little bit to how the different religions and spiritualities feel about sexuality as well. You'll come to find that it's really only the Judeo-Christian religions that seem to look at sexuality as a distraction, something you shouldn't do unless it's under certain circumstances. So it's kind of funny how it pans out that way. Don't get me wrong, but you're going to come to find that that batch, the Judeo-Christian religions, are truly the only batch of religions that that see sex in almost like a negative light. So let's take a look at how all the other religions and spiritualities actually look at sex and sexuality. So let's take a look here. I'm telling you guys, this is a topic that needs to be tackled, and that's why we're tackling it tonight. So we have the different spiritual traditions have diverse views on sex. Some traditions, like some strands of Western religions, view sex primarily through the lens of procreation and marital intimacy, while others, like tantric traditions in Hinduism and Buddhism, see sex as a pathway to spiritual enlightenment and energy cultivation. Some Eastern philosophies, like Taoism, also view sex as a vital aspect of spiritual practice, emphasizing the balance of yin and yang energies. So like I said, guys, really the only ones we're looking at here that kind of view it in such a really strict standpoint are the Judeo-Christian religions. So we have Western religions, many Western religions, particularly those with Abrahamic roots, aka the Judeo-Christian religions, generally view sex within the context of marriage and procreation, often emphasizing its role in a family life and procreation. My thing about this, though, guys, is we don't live in a world like that anymore. And this has always kind of been my beef with a lot of the conservative viewpoints that we look at that are floating around at this point in time, is a lot of them want us to go back to the way things were. We can't do that because if you open any sociology textbook and you look at any society that starts to regress and go backwards, usually what that means is that society is not far from collapsing and falling. So that's one of the biggest things I want to point out here. While yes, we can take these morals, while yes, we can take this family structure and a lot of this stuff, and we can find a way to implement it in our new world that we're walking into, our new earth, okay? But we are in the year 2025, guys. We are not in the year 1960. We are not in the year 1970, okay? There is no going back when it comes to this. So that's just something that I want to point out. But nonetheless, let's keep going. So we have the tantric traditions. Tantra, a branch of Hinduism and Buddhism, view sex as a powerful tool for spiritual transformation, using it as a means to unlock and channel spiritual energy. Tantric sex, also known as sexual yoga, involves practices that utilize sexual activity in a ritual or yogic context. And we're actually going to get into that here in a bit. Eastern philosophies, Taoism, for example, emphasizes the importance of balancing yin and yang energies through sexual practices, believing that prolonged conscious lovemaking can enhance both physical and spiritual well-being. Buddhism teachings on sex vary, with some focusing on the need to restrain sexual desires to focus on spiritual practices, while others, particularly in Mahayana Buddhism and Vajrayana Buddhism, view sex as one of the many energies of life that can be used for spiritual growth. So, guys, like I said, the Judeo-Christian religions are the only ones that kind of look at it in a very strict context. And I know, while yes, I'm sure I have some Christians who listen to me a little bit, just kind of keep that in mind, that viewpoint is restricting. And that's kind of the best way I'm going to put it. And so we have Hinduism, like Tantra, often sees sex as a natural part of life, but also emphasizes moderation and the importance of spiritual enlightenment as a higher goal. So that's kind of the sum up of what I'm going to give you guys on the perspectives of how these other religions and spiritualities actually look at sex. Now, one of the things I want to talk about real quick is the spiritual power of sex. And what we're going to kind of get into, there's two aspects of sex, and we're going to get down and dirty. We're going to get nasty. We're just going to talk about it. So we are going to be talking about semen and menstrual blood. Absolutely. We're going to be kind of breaking down the spiritual power of semen and the spiritual power of menstrual blood. And why we're going to be doing this is because we're going to gain an understanding of where a lot of the celibacy comes from, a lot of this semen retention that's kind of going around the manosphere at this point in time. When I get done, I will give you my opinions on that as a man. And we're going to kind of dive into menstrual blood too and its spiritual power as well. And we know that both of these fluids are involved with these sexual organs. They're involved in not so much menstrual blood per se, but semen. But the menstrual blood itself is due to a very divine process. And it has an aspect of very strong spiritual energy when we're talking about this. So let's kind of dive into these two aspects. We have semen and we have menstrual blood. I never thought I'd be doing a show on this, by the way, but here the hell we are and we're doing it. So let's get into it, guys. I know I still, even though I've been around the block in my life when it comes to quite a few things, I don't know how I've still retained a smidge of innocence about me. But I still have. So like in a lot of ways, when I talk about this stuff, I almost feel, kind of like a youngin trying to burst into this and try and talk about this. I don't know how I maintained this, little smidge of innocence about me, but it does. It makes me kind of giggle when it comes to this also. So nonetheless, let's break into it, man. We have the significance of seminal fluid. So seminal fluid holds different meanings in Tibetan Buddhism, Purana, and science. In Tibetan Buddhism, it symbolizes the essence from which the enlightened mind emerges, highlighting its importance in spiritual union and enlightenment. It refers to specific bodily fluids linked to purity and enlightenment. In Purana, it connects to the life essence tied to narratives and the divine, particularly in the context of Lord Shiva's power. Scientifically, seminal fluid is the reproductive fluid containing sperm essential for conception. Absolutely. So we do know that there is a lot of different sources of this, but one of the biggest things, I think it comes up in this article, but it is said that 1 drop of semen is equivalent to 1,000,000 drops of blood. When we're talking about, hey there, Jamie, how you doing? Thanks for being here. But yes, a lot of different Eastern traditions see 1 drop of semen as equivalent to 1,000,000 drops of blood. And, when we look at the occult significance of blood and, the energy that blood has in and of itself, and you're hearing that 1 drop of semen is equivalent to 1,000,000 drops of blood, us guys have some powerful junk down there. That's basically what I'm going to say. For a lack of better words, we have some powerful junk down there. And I'm trying to maintain a straight face while I talk about this, but nonetheless, yes. So diving into this article, in Hinduism, seminal fluid symbolizes not only the biological creation through Indra, but also Lord Shiva's powerful energy aimed at birthing a son destined to defeat evil, representing life's essence and continuity across generations. So this is just kind of a tidbit on what the significance of seminal fluid is. Now let's kind of just dive into menstrual blood. Yes, menstrual blood. And for those of you who know, if you know, you know, I did a weird experiment with that, and I'm not going to get into it right now. But needless to say, it worked. And this stuff's actually very powerful. So yes, let's dive into menstrual blood. So, and this, I think you guys are going to find very interesting here. So we have the spiritual power of menstrual blood and menstruation. Across many ancient cultures, menstruation has been considered a form of purification. Bharat Samhita emphasizes the innate and deep-rooted purity of women for this reason, stating women are blessed by the moon with personal purity. It goes on that the Brahmanas are pure in their feet, the cows at the back, the sheep and the horse in their face, and women all over their body. Being objects of matchless purity, never are women defiled. For the menses to remove their blemishes monthly. Inherently and very actively within her body is the entire universe, the cyclical shifting of creation and destruction. With each cycle of the moon, for a span of time, she holds the nourishing space of creation. And for another period of time, she becomes more akin to a destructive void, expelling the disorderly, the old and unused. Having both processes within her inherently helps her to maintain an energetic balance and inner purity, said to be beyond that of men. The bija of woman, Stri, is that of the goddess Tara, who is the Ketu avatar of Vishnu. Ketu is the Moska, liberation, Karaka, helping one to shed and destroy unnecessary excess to liberate and to realign with their center. An alternative meaning of Moksha is shedding blood. Now, so Moksha also means the rainbow body as well. So attaining moksha, but this is like a different connotation of it as well. Even Hebrews 9-22, in reference to the necessity of blood sacrifices for healing repentance, almost everything is purified with blood indeed. Without the shedding of blood, there's no forgiveness of sins. I'm not getting into that before. But nonetheless, for a woman, the husband is represented as Jupiter, and Tara is married to him and heals him traditionally. Women have a special spiritual connection to this concept of receiving excess without becoming impure, because they have a defined rhythmic period for Apanavayu, the downward flow of energy during menstruation. Like Ketu, then, they receive, consume, but do not energetically hoard, and therefore they purify whatever they receive through this bloodshed. In this way, they're purifying force too for men. She takes the energy and has the innate capability to either nourish, grow, and transform or / organize it into something new or to shed it. In this way, the same purification that takes place for women during menstruation takes place for men when they enter the yoni in the sexual act and experience its transformative and purifying heat. The same act of the transformation of excess into blessings is replicated when a priest offers ghee into the fire pit, yoni. So this gets pretty interesting, guys. This is kind of breaking down, the divinity behind menstruation and the divinity behind the act of sex itself. So getting into this a little bit further, we know that women are portals for life. They have interdimensional portals built into them. And I actually had a friend of mine who kind of gave that term, kind of said that, that they have interdimensional portals that are built into them. And women most certainly do, they do. And that's a very spiritual thing, to be able to bring life into this world, to be able to give birth to a child, and that shows why that aspect of a woman, especially when it comes to menstruation, menstrual blood is a very spiritually powerful thing, so let's kind of dive into this just a little bit deeper. So it's mythologically, the origin of menstruation is said to stem from the god Indra, who committed the sin of killing Brahmana, being unable to flush the sin out himself. He distributed his sin to trees, water, earth, and finally women, who bore his sin through menstruation and wash it away monthly. In this way, they cleanse the king of the gods of his impurity, just as they do this for their consort, ridding him of the surplus that can become sin. The days of menstruation can, in this way, be linked to Indra's nakshatra Jyesta. The nakshatra is associated with the eldest goddess Dhumavati of infernal or non-receptive space. So I'm going to kind of drop off this one, guys, because now we're getting into some specifics here, but I did leave the link in the description for both the Rumble and the YouTube videos. All of these links are available there. So if you guys kind of want to dive in and take a look at what we're talking about tonight, I always do that. All right, guys, so we understand the power of semen, we understand the power of menstrual blood. Okay, we see that when it comes to occult context and it comes to spiritual contexts, that these are two very powerful things. Okay, and one of the biggest things I'm going to say about semen retention, all right, is that it's good to practice it, okay, at least in my opinion. Now, however, okay, one of the biggest things I will say about retention is retention takes extreme discipline. Okay, it most certainly does. All right, and if you're going to go on this path of retention, we have I have Kyle. I am very single. Jamie, very single. Drew, very single. Yes, I know it's a little bit different for me, guys. I know, but kind of on the topic of semen retention, I mean, I think it's a great thing to practice, but number one, you have to be very disciplined. You have to cultivate yourself in a way to where you've done a lot of your healing and you have a certain level of awareness. So you can practice this, because this is the one thing I'm going to say. If you have not developed a healthy relationship with sex and your sexuality, and you try to do retention, what's going to happen to you is you're going to fuck up. Bottom line, you're going to mess up. You're going to blow whatever it might be. And you have to have that discipline, and that's why for a lot of people, what I would recommend is a stair-step method. You have 7 days of retention, 1 day of release. And then as you get more disciplined with your retention, the next one I would do is maybe start bumping it up to 10 days. Go gradually, okay? Like, a lot of these things, a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it myself too, because I always, in the past would want to go from, step 1 to step 10. I said, fuck steps 2 through 9. I want to get to there, but I always would get slapped back down. I would always get humbled, and things like that. But the one thing I'm going to throw in there is, if you need to do a stair-step method, that's okay. Okay, this is something new that you're trying. Okay, I know there's a lot of guys out there, especially in the manosphere, who are like all the time retention, dry orgasms when you're having sex with your girlfriend or your wife. You never release it. You never do this. Okay, blah blah blah. And I kind of understand where they're coming from on it. Like, don't get me wrong. So there's some diehards with everything out there. But at the same time, you have to see what is right for you. Just because there's one guy doing it online who says, I haven't released in over 1,000 days or something like that, don't, get caught up in that comparison game. Always start small when you're doing new changes to your life. That's kind of the best thing I can throw out there for everybody. That way you don't get discouraged, with this new form of discipline that you're looking to kind of impart upon yourself. I mean, for women, I'm not sure how it is for women on sexual retention, because I'm not a woman. In fact, I mean, I don't identify as one either. All of you all know that too. But, I'm from what I've heard from the females I've talked to in the past, it can be similar for them. Also, there has to be a discipline. There has to be a respect for that nature about us. So yeah, guys, if you're going to go down the path of semen retention, I think it's a great path. I'm not hating on it at all. I am a practitioner myself, but I have also too, a wife, and I have to be considerate of that too. So I just kind of go with no self-service, and we're going to get into why self-service is potentially a bad thing also. But nonetheless, let's dive into the spectrum of these outlooks on sex when it comes to spirituality. And we are going to start at the strictest end. We are going to start at celibacy, right? And I actually know a lot of people who are single, who are in our spiritual community, who actually choose celibacy, as their path until they find a partner who is similar in frequency and vibration, similar in viewpoints and things like that, is something that fits them. Okay, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that in my eyes. That's their decision, that's their choice. But I'm also going to give you a solution after we break this down, at least in my eyes, of something you can do if that's not your choice. Okay, and but nonetheless, let's kind of dive into the extreme ends of the spectrum. We have celibacy first. And I know a lot of the single guys in the section are just kind of like, oh my effing God, dude, I don't know how the hell I would even do something like that. And trust me, I can understand that. But like again, this is a form of discipline, guys. When you're looking to implement a new form of discipline into your life, you need to start small. Because if you start like, 200% all in, balls deep, pun intended, uh, um, you may succeed. I'm not saying you won't, but I know enough about how humans work to know that sometimes we have to uh, ease into this, a little bit. But nonetheless, let's kind of dive into this article for just a sec. So, is celibacy a necessity on the spiritual path? And we have the question: is celibacy the only way, or can people in whatever is considered as normal life also have a foothold in spirituality? So we have, this is actually a page from Sadhguru. The Sadhguru, don't get me wrong, guys. I kind of fell off with him during COVID because he started defending the narrative. But pre-COVID Sadhguru was really great stuff. Like, I mean, in fact, I recommend you guys listen to his earlier stuff. It's very thought-provoking and it's helped me a lot in my journey. That's part of that disillusionment I was talking about in the beginning, because in the early stages of my journey, I used to love Sadhguru all the way up until 2020, when he started preaching the narrative and telling everybody to obey their governments and what they said. I was like, man, I just, ugh. But nonetheless, let's dive into this. So we have: the whole dimension of spirituality is to grow beyond the physical, to taste something beyond the physical. If your involvement with the physical is very deep, naturally your attachment to the body is very strong. It's not sex per se, which can be an impediment in one's growth, but one's attachment to the body definitely is an impediment. There is no question about that. Generally, sexuality breeds that attachment. Celibacy has been talked about in that context. But does the sexual act itself stop a person from pursuing his spiritual path? I think you guys will like to hear this. Not at all. But what is being said is, unless your focus is strong and one pointed, the chances of progress, or the progress itself, will naturally be very slow because you are thinking in many directions at the same time. So there's some things I actually kind of disagree with on this. I'll dive into what I disagree with after we kind of finish it up. But in my perspective, he's half right, half wrong. And for a person who wants to go all out and do things in a short time, the advice is definitely to not get entangled with these bodily aspects, because then you will get involved in many things. For many people, if they start out with any kind of physical involvement with something, emotions and thoughts follow, and their whole life becomes just that. They cannot keep their focus on anything else. If a person is such that one department of his life is handled one way and is totally absent when he sits for something else, then it is not so much of an impediment. But most people cannot deal with their lives like that. It just entangles them on all levels. It is that context that this has been said. Whatever activity you do in your life has nothing to do with the spiritual process, because the spiritual process is inward, activity is outward. Now, that I 100% agree with. Action is either of the body, mind, energies, or emotion. All these things can be stepping stones for a spiritual process, but they are not spiritual in any sense because all of them belong to the physical realm. Spirituality and activity have actually got nothing to do with each other if you know how to keep a clear distance between the two. But that distance is not there in most people. So we say, do not get entangled in this, do not get entangled in that. If you are absolutely conscious in every aspect of your life, nothing that you do in your life is an impediment. But that is a faraway thing for most people. So one of the things I'm going to break down, and this is just kind of where I slightly disagree with this, okay, is the attachment to one's body. Now, why I disagree with this, of course we want to practice non-attachment while we're here, okay, but there's certain forms of bodily attachment that are actually healthy and beneficial for the spiritual journey. Taking care of yourself, eating well, working out, exercising for your health, okay? Because you guys have heard me talk about this on my show before. If you increase your physical health, by default, you increase your frequency and your emotional, mental, and spiritual health. So when we're talking about attachments to the body, what I would say is a good way to describe this in this context are lustful attachments, things that do not benefit the spiritual health at all. And our body is part of our spirit as well. You are a body in a consciousness. You are a body. Your body does not have a soul. Your body is a manifestation of your soul. So to me, to have no attachment to your body in a sense of wanting to take care of it or, wanting to be in good physical health, I think that's detrimental. So what I kind of think the way I would go about this is I would say lustful attachments to the body, sensual, always focusing on the hedonistic aspects of the body. I kind of want to correct that there. But also too, something else he brings up here as well. He talks about the physical. Action is either of the body, mind, energies, or emotion. So we know that the body and mind and energies or emotion are intertwined with our spiritual self. Okay, so this is kind of where I do fall off with Sadhguru on some things. But the one thing I do agree with is most certainly the spiritual process is inward and activity is outward, but it's a reciprocation. Okay, your perceived external experience is a mirror of what is going on within you. So that's kind of where I kind of want to go with that. But nonetheless, I mean, this is just kind of a touch that celibacy is not necessary. It is a choice. Bottom line. Okay. And I can't fault people for that choice if they think it's right for them. And like I said, one of the biggest things you're going to see about this topic, it's all about what's right for you. All about it. Each individual person is going to have their own perspective. There is never a one size fits all when it comes to spirituality. There never is. Okay. And that's something I'm trying to smash here tonight because there's so many people in this community when it comes to this specific topic. My way's the right way. No, this way's the right way. You must follow this way. No, if you're following this way, etc., etc. But guys, as you can see, this is all subjective. All right, let's get into the other extreme of this spectrum, the free love of it all, polyamory. There's a lot of people in the conscious collective, especially in the anarchist community, who have gone down the road of polyamory and, have been kind of going with multiple partners. For me, this is where it gets funny. I'm going to be honest, that's not for me. It's not for me. I'm not hating on the people who do it. Props to them. Like I said, that's their choice. That's their interpretation. That's their perspective. They think that's right for them. But in my eyes, and ladies, I mean no disrespect when I say this, but one woman requires a very large amount of attention, energy, and emotion. I personally could not imagine spreading that between multiple people. To me, it would be downright exhausting. And I'm just being straight up about it. I don't get me wrong. Like, I know everybody's different, but at least in my eyes, it's not for me. It's not for me. I just think things would go south and get relatively ugly really quick. But let's look at why people in our conscious collective choose polyamory. And why is this a choice that a lot of people are going towards? So let's kind of take a look here on this. I know I'm trying to keep it PG tonight, I promise. Okay, but it's not looking like that. So we have polyamory and spiritual growth, the heart of the matter. So this is the perspective of this article, guys. This is not my perspective. We're just going over this. So polyamory helps God evolve. This may seem like a bizarre, perhaps even nonsensical statement, but I hope you will understand what I mean and perhaps even agree with me by the end of this blog post. There are many reasons why someone might be attracted to polyamory. More sex, making a social political statement. That's definitely why so many people in the anarchist movement do it. It's making a social and political statement. Trying to fix an existing relationship. I like how they have not recommended in parentheses right here. And wanting to grow personally are some of the usual suspects. For me, I can honestly say that polyamory has led to more emotional and spiritual growth than drugs and meditation combined. I'm still polyamorous half a lifetime later. Like a snake repeatedly shedding its skin, polyamory forces me to let go of old ways of being and expand into larger and better versions of myself. It may be helpful at this point to provide some context by sharing some of my core spiritual theories. I believe the astonishing complexity of the universe evolved from some very simple principles of love and attraction. I can't negate that. I can't debate that. I do think that is the case. Everything in the universe is attached to everything else, and the infinite ways in which organisms have evolved over time are various expressions of that attraction. I would go so far to say love is the very fabric of the universe, and its purpose is to know itself as pure love. Absolutely. I can't disagree with that. Technically, talking about purpose in this way makes me a teleologist in that I believe evolution has a direction and endpoint rather than a random outcome of survival of the fittest, which I agree with that too. Think of evolution like a leaf falling from a tree. Given the law of gravity, we can pretty well assume that the leaf will fall towards the earth, but its exact journey is a mystery. A wind might pick it up and carry it miles away. The leaf might land on a branch and be stuck there for minutes or days. Or it might flutter down and rest on the ground at the base of the tree. Natural selection focuses on the journey of leaves, which on one level is quite random, but it misses the larger context and direction of the leaf's journey. In a similar way, I believe our life's journey is quite random on a day-to-day level, but our larger evolutionary journey is geared towards greater love and compassion. I can't debate any of that. So what does all of this have to do with polyamory? I believe we are all on a journey to more fully experience and express love within the constraints of our physical world. Our capacity to love multiple persons is limited by time and space, but our quest is to expand our bandwidth. Think about it. If time and distance were not barriers, why wouldn't we love everyone? However, it can take a long time for us to fully develop our capacity to love, and I can think of no better field of practice than polyamory. When Gwen and I were married 25 years ago, the first line of our wedding vows reads, "For all the days of our lives, we will take our marriage as our spiritual path." When we opened our marriage, I began to question everything I thought I knew and that spiritual path began to feel more like being shot out of a cannon, like a fish seeing water for the first time. I started to recognize our invisible cultural narratives and realized that most did not actually ring true. For example, I learned that I'm not actually a jealous person. I can feel compersion when Gwen is happy with her other lovers. Later, once I started dating, I experienced the epiphany that it is possible to truly love more than one person. And I found that giving each other freedom to love as our heart's desire did not result in our separation, but rather just the opposite. In fact, I'm sure we would not be together today if we did not open our marriage 24 years ago. So this article kind of even dives in a little bit deeper. Learning to love fully is a journey, starting at birth of letting go of our egos, specifically our sense of insecurity and our constant grasping for what we need. All of us start our lives primarily concerned with our own survival. We reach out to those who provide resources, mainly food, and recoil from those who we perceive to be a threat. As we mature, we are able to take on the perspective of others and form mutually beneficial relationships. We are taught the golden rule, which is the highest ideal of every major religion. But doing unto others as we would have done unto them, unto us, is still seeing others through our own egos. I believe we can even go even further and adopt what some call the platinum rule, which is doing unto others as they would have us do unto them. We tend to love others in the way we would like to be loved, and it takes a lot of personal work to let go of our egos and love others in a way that can support their spiritual growth and freedom. In monogamy, we curtail our freedoms in exchange for the promise that our partner will be there for us only. In polyamory, there is no such security. When our partner has an intimate romantic relationship with someone else, our fears of abandonment and inadequacy bubble to the surface. Confronting them requires letting go of our own need for security through another person and allowing our partner the freedom to grow and explore. So this is kind of where I'm going to dive into this just a little bit deeper. So believe it or not, all right, at a time. Now, this is if we're going with consensual history, and we're going with, the common narrative of history, which a lot of I've kind of done away with that. But for retrospect and to kind of roll with what we're talking about here, monogamy was not a thing until later on for human beings. It was very common in a lot of ancient civilizations for a man to have many mistresses and a woman to have many suitors. Okay. And this kind of went on for quite some time. One of the other things as well is there were forms of marriage back then, but they were not like the marriage ceremonies that we have today. And back then, too, community was a bigger part in these ancient civilizations. The community structure. But then, we had organized religion come into play. We had, the Catholic Church come forward and go, no more of this. This is not good. This is considered adultery. This is considered this. So marriage and relationship should be one person with one person. And that's where it kind of stuck. But we have to understand something. We're talking about years of programming. Okay. We're talking about years of this programming. Because even though we got out of the dark ages, we got into the Renaissance, we got into the age of the old alchemists and when alchemy first started to come into being and things like that, these norms, this conditioning from this has still been a huge aspect and part of, human society and human culture and the human psyche. Okay. So the one thing I'm going to say about that is even our country, America, that I live in, Judeo-Christian values are interwoven into the structure of this country, into the. Now, I'm I'm not debating the fact that, well, yes, the people who created this country were definitely Freemasons, and there was a lot of other ulterior motives. And a lot of people think Satan's short season started when this country was created. But nonetheless, these values have been interwoven into our conditioning as a human society, as a human civilization for quite some time now. And that's why you'll notice that there are some people out there who do completely fine with monogamy, do completely fine with being with just one person. But then what you will also see is you will see some human beings out there who cannot stay monogamous. They have multiple partners, and they do practice a polyamorous lifestyle. All right. And the one thing I'm going to say about that is we can see kind of the both sides of this. In just that example I said, we have this conditioning that's been ingrained in our civilization for quite some time. And we have adopted this conditioning as a moral structure. But when we're talking about ancient humanity, it could have been looked at in a very different light or a very different context. So that's just kind of my 2 cents I want to add. This is why we see this in today's society. We see people who can be faithful to just one person, but there's people who just cannot be faithful to one person, and they take on the polyamorous lifestyles because this is exactly, Diana, exactly. We're birthing a new society. Who knows how it will go? Another comment from Jamie Angel Wings. We have most people can't handle pure love because it's literally a very high frequency. Lust gets confused a lot with love. It's the opposite of pure love. I completely agree with that. And that's honestly where I think a lot of the free love movement came from in the 60s. I think it was free lust disguised as free love, but no, I agree. We're birthing a new society. Who knows how it will go? So that's why, yes, we keep ourselves open. But I just kind of wanted to touch on that. I kind of wanted to throw that out there. That at a time, ancient humanity could have been in a lot of ways polyamorous, and it was looked at differently. And then through the conditioning, through the control structures that we experienced as humans in our however millennia we've been existing here at this point in time, that conditioning is filtered down into moral values, into our moral compass, into how we operate with each other on a societal and a social level. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on it. Like I said, do I knack on people who choose polyamory? Absolutely not. That is their choice. Okay. That's a big thing I'm trying to portray here tonight. This topic is very much your choice. All right. It is not going to be, there's no set groundwork. There's no set rules. And you do what you feel is right for you. But nonetheless, guys, I kind of want to talk into how sacred sex is. We're going to dive into that really fast. I'm probably not going to be able to cover it. We're probably going to have to do a part 2 to this episode because I'm not going to be able to cover all of this research I have on this topic. I just realized the time and how many more web pages and articles I have to kind of throw in this. So one thing you guys can bank on, we will be doing a part 2 on this for sure. But nonetheless, let's talk a little bit about our Kundalini energy, on how it's sacred and how it's intertwined with our sexual energy. And we're going to talk about how the act of sex is actually very sacred itself, and how our orgasm is known as what is it called here? I have the term here. So it is called La Petite Mort, the little death. And of course, those of you out there who have dabbled in chaos magic know exactly why there's this correlation between this. So let's kind of dive into our Kundalini energy real quick on how it works with our sexual energy and how this energy is actually quite sacred. And you don't want to just spread it everywhere. You know what I mean? You don't want to just as Sadhguru said, I'm going to quote him. He actually said this one at This is an exact quote from him. He says, "You don't just want to be spilling that energy into the sheets." And that I 100% agree with. But I agree with it in the standpoint of recklessly. Of course, if you're with somebody, you have a husband, a wife, a partner, that's not a reckless expenditure of energy, because the act of sex itself is a reciprocation of energy. And that's why you noticed all the guys out there, all right, especially, I can only speak for guys because I'm not a woman. When you actually have sex with a woman, it is a whole different experience than self-service. All right. When you do self-service, after you're done, you feel drained, you feel guilty, you feel tired, you feel unmotivated, you feel a lot of different things. Okay. And this is an example on how you can see the two are energetically different. But when you do self-service, you drain. It's energetic suicide. That's the best way. That's what even the Taoists would call it. Is they would call it energetic suicide if you're self-servicing yourself as a man. But you notice as a man, when you actually have sex with a woman and you walk out of the experience, you feel like you have more energy. You feel great. You feel like you've, I'm trying not to laugh when I say this, but you do. You feel more energized. You feel more motivated. And absolutely, Diana, you swap demons 100%. And but you feel motivated. You feel good. Like you have confidence. Like, all of this stuff. So this is the two different energetic signatures from these two different things. You can see the difference. So that's why we know the act of sex itself is not just energetic suicide. It's a reciprocation of energy. It's an intertwining of energy. And that's why it's honestly good to have a partner that's on a similar frequency than you, or around the same frequency as you, because it is an energy swap, and that's kind of why you don't want to behave lustfully as a spiritual man or woman. Because if you go out, let's say you go out to a bar or something like that, and you pick someone up and they're low frequency, and you end up swapping that energy with them, you're going to be taking some of that on, and you could be taking on a kind of energy that you don't want to take on. So that's kind of something I'm going to add in there as well. I'm not going to be able to cover this whole topic tonight. Damn. But we're gonna get through Kundalini and how it's sacred, and then we'll close out. But we're definitely gonna be doing a part 2 on this, because I haven't even got a chance to dive into this in its entirety. Sorry if I'm a little bit tired tonight to you guys. It's been a crazy week at work too. So let's pull up our Kundalini energy real quick on why it is special. So we got sexual energy is our creative force. So this is a huge reason why we don't want to just be throwing it around everywhere, because this is actually where our creative force comes from. So we have sexual energy as our creative force. Sexual energy, something juicy because it's the weekend. It has been a while since my last post, and a lot has been going on, yada, yada. But let's talk about how sexual energy is life force energy. Sexual energy is a powerful force. When it is used consciously, it can be a great catalyst for spiritual growth and healing by surrendering to it, to yourself and your body as a whole. What a waste if we are not fully capable or able to enjoy our body's sex and sexual energy, because this energy is also needed to manifest our true potential and highest forms of self through channeling it into higher forms of energy. Yes, you heard me. We can cultivate sexual energy and use it as our creative force. Sexual energy is bomb when it's used with good intention. I gotta laugh at that. Sexual energy is bomb. I'm not disagreeing with it either when it's used with good intentions as a driving force. Sexual energy shall never be used to intentionally hurt or manipulate anyone. It shall not be channeled from addiction or ego tripping on the expense of others, nor shall we let anyone harm us or be disrespectful towards us. The responsibility is always shared. To begin with, sexual energy creates life. That is how powerful it is. We can also use this energy to create the life we desire and so much more. How to cultivate sexual energy and bring more juiciness and pleasure into our lives. How to feel more satisfied and to simply create more abundance in our everyday lives. So, how to activate sexual energy and keep our juices flowing. Meditate. Of course, meditation is a great way to cultivate your sexual energy. And of course, you guys know also that Kundalini yoga is also another great way of cultivating your sexual energy, and that's why the importance of Mul Band comes into play here. For those of you who don't know what Mula Band is, it is your root lock. It is actually where your root chakra is located, and guess where it's located? In your perineum, right in between your genitals and your anus. So this kind of shows you right there that just because our root chakra is located in that very specific region of our bodies, that this is some serious stuff. This is really true when it comes to our sexual energy being a creative force. So definitely meditation. And I'm going to, at the end of this episode, give you some tricks you can do with Mula Band as well to help kind of push your sexual energy up into your higher triangles. But yes, definitely, I agree. Meditation is key when it comes to this. You have hug for at least 20 seconds or longer. Yes, absolutely. Hugging is a great thing. We have hormones. Hormones are signaling chemicals that are produced and secreted in our endocrine system. You guys know this, and we know what they regulate. This means a lack of sleep, unhealthy diet, lack or too much exercise, a stressful lifestyle or mindset, unhealthy relationship with self or others may cause a hormonal imbalance. And I will tell you what, guys, too much exercise, believe it or not, will tank your testosterone. Yes, it will. That's why it's good to find a balance of what to do. And this is why you need to rest, and this is why you need to sleep good. So that's just a tip from another man who's been working out for a long time. You have to find a sustainable way to train, or you'll tank your testosterone and you'll jack up your cortisol. And something that's supposed to increase your sex drive will actually deplete it because you're training too fucking hard. Just a little bit of advice there. But nonetheless, on too much exercise, a stressful lifestyle or mindset, unhealthy relationship with self or others may cause hormonal imbalance. As a whole and as complete beings and for flowing sexual creative energy, we need to consider all of the above. Balance and harmony with our body and mind goes hand in hand with great abundant creative energy. Hormonal imbalance can cause stagnation and block our energy flow. Gut health and microbiome affect hormonal balance, and specific nutrients act as hormone precursors as well. Poor diet and gut health alone can be linked to hormonal issues. Hip movements. And you also have to, number one, create. All right. This is the way to let that energy go to higher purposes. And that's something even myself I've been working on a little bit more, is being more creative in my life. I've always been a creative person. I play guitar. I've been playing guitar for like 27 years at this point. Using this energy to actually create and instead of letting it build up inside of you is key to utilizing this energy for higher purposes as well. But just based on this article that we went through right now, you can see how important this creative force is within us, how important this sexual energy is. It creates life. It deals with creation. It helps us tap into our creator abilities. So if you're going to focus on your creative abilities and working with your creator, you want to learn how to utilize this energy. And one of the biggest advices I can give you, all right, is number one, we're human. Don't get me wrong, okay? I'm not saying we aren't human. But at the same time, if you ever find yourself, to all my single people out there, having a urge that could potentially be unhealthy, one of the biggest exercises I can recommend to you is to contract your Mula Band. And how I'm not disagreeing with that, Diane. That's a huge possibility. 100%. I do think there's something to do with that. That's interesting. But so how do you contract Mula Bond? I'm going to show you. You're going to contract your perineum. You're going to contract. You're going to be, it's like you're squeezing your genitals, your anus, the area in between, and your navel all at once. Okay. And you can practice with it. You can work with it. At first, you're probably not going to be that great at it because it's not something that everybody does unless you're practicing chakra yoga and Kundalini yoga. But once you get better at it, if you ever find yourself having lustful, unhealthy urges when it comes to this particular kind of energy, and man, exactly, Diana, exactly, a man Kegel. But if you ever find yourself having a unhealthy, lustful urge with this energy, contract and hold Mula Band for 30 seconds. What this is going to do is this is going to shoot that energy through your lower triangle, through your Manipura chakra, which is your solar plexus chakra, which is actually your internal fire. And that internal fire is going to cleanse that energy out of its lustful state as it moves up and into your higher triangle, your heart, your throat, your third eye, and your crown. And then there, once you do that, you can utilize that energy for its creative purpose. So that's a little tip and trick from me. Actually, the ancient Egyptians would do something very similar. When they were in the act of having sex, when they would orgasm, they would contract Mula Band and they would intake the sexual energy from the experience so it wasn't released in the experience. So the ancient Egyptians actually practiced Mula Band in a context as well. So that would be my number one tip, for any of you single people out there who are still working on discipline and you get greeted with an unhealthy urge or a lustful urge, just try contracting your Mula Band for about 30 seconds. Try that. And I guarantee you what's going to happen is you're no longer going to have that urge. So that's something to think about. All righty, guys, let me drop into one more thing real fast. Like I said, we're definitely going to have to do a part 2 on this episode. I had no idea I had this much stuff to go over. So next solo episode, we will definitely be doing a section spirituality part 2 at some point. But let's kind of talk about how sacred sex itself is. And then I'm going to give a sum up on what I think is the best road, at least in my opinion. So nonetheless, let's pull it up. This was interesting, guys. I had to, like I said, it's funny to me because like I still have a little bit of a tad of innocence about me, even though I've been around the block. So kind of talking about this topic is interesting for me. Sacred sexuality, how to have sacred spiritual sex. The biggest misconception about sex is that it's dirty, forbidden, or wrong. In truth, sex is sacred, not in a churchy way. Though don't get me wrong, if that's your thing, I'm down. But as pure cosmic energy, sex is a physical act that provides a direct connection to the divine. I think we've been going about it the wrong way for a very long time. Here's what it means to have spiritual, sacred sex. Sex and spirituality, how they're linked. From my personal experience, sexual, spiritual, and creative energy are really all parts of one whole. If you are expressed creatively, you are going to be expressed sexually. If you are in the flow of expressive sex, then you know that God must have a hand in it, and creativity is about spiritual communion. Sex is a core function of humanity. It plays a huge role in the physical health and vitality of the body. Sex is an also immense universal force that can merge your spirit, your divine essence, with your body. Sex is involution, spirit descending, and evolution, physical ascending. meaning at the heart in an explosion of pure love. But to fully experience sex in a divine way, we have to engage in it in a divine form. What is sacred sexuality? Sacred sexuality is completely counter to what our culture presents as the experience of sex. In modern society, sex is completely externally focused. It's an objectification of form, mired in fantasy, watched from the sidelines as a spectator through porn and taking for granted the warm human flesh we connect with. I did not get a chance to go into, I shouldn't have said that, but I don't really care about YouTube anyways. Didn't even get a chance to go into corn. But yeah, maybe we'll touch really briefly on that and before the end. But I do have some articles that I did leave in the description you guys can look at for yourselves. While this widely used approach will surely produce an orgasm, it can be animalistic and short, 22 seconds on average. Experiencing sex this way takes us away from the present. The present is the only truth there really is. It takes us outside of ourselves, when really the Holy Grail, sex as communion with the soul, is a possibility that exists within us anytime, all the time. Why is sex the most coveted experience in modern day culture? Because we seek this connection with the divine, because it allows us to transcend ourselves in a way no other experience does. We know that there is a potential for sex to be transformational and life-changing. We've been expecting way too little of sex for a very long time. It's a massively powerful energy, and it has more potential than we realize to be a force for the amazing in our lives. What if sex experienced as sacred could open a field of intimacy in your relationship or with your lover that you never knew existed? So how to have sacred sex? Connect to your spirituality. Most certainly. All right. Of course, that's something a lot of people here are already doing. Connecting with their spirituality. They're on their spiritual growth and their evolution. So definitely maintain a constant awareness and connection with that divine within you. So decide to see your partner as divine. Absolutely. We are all subjective focal points of the divine. We are all have that spark of the divine within us. And yes, definitely see that your partner as a sacred aspect of the divine, most certainly. And yes, that person who annoys you and challenges you to no end, expand your understanding and surrender all judgment of the person God has provided as your soulmate. Embrace the act of sex as worship of your partner and a sacred representation of the divine, no matter how different you imagine these things to be. That's actually really good advice. Create the environment in which sacred sex can blossom. Engage the senses. Find a soft, beautiful blanket that is only for union with your beloved. Sprinkle rose petals around the space, light candles, and play music. I recommend getting a drone sound from an app for a neutral backdrop that encourages healing and a spiritual vibe. Prepare your body. Of course, you're going to shower or bathe. But yes, treat it as a experience for sure. Begin sacred sex with an essential oils ritual. Join your third eyes together, breathing for 6 inhales and 6 exhales. This is interesting. Take turns anointing each other with essential oils like sandalwood and rose. Place the oil on each other's crown, third eye, heart space, and genitals. Follow your sexual intuition and experience a sacred orgasm. When you climax, practice drawing that energy into your heart, just like I was talking about with the Egyptians. So practice luxurious aftercare. So basically, in a nutshell, is treating it almost as a ritual, treating it as a divine ritual, to where there is a sense of worship, but not in a bad way, but it's almost like a sense of respect, a sense of love for your partner, and understanding that they are also a subjective focal point of the divine. And you both are being uniting subjective focal points of this divine consciousness that we're all a part of. And that's a very beautiful perspective when you look at it that way. So nonetheless, guys, let's do a quick sum up. I am definitely not going to be able to finish this whole episode tonight, but this is kind of what I'm going to say. All right. In my opinion and in my view, yes, sex should be viewed as something sacred between two people who love each other. Okay. Now, mind you, I'm a realistic person. Okay. And I understand humans are going to human. Okay. That's just how we roll. All right. We're most certainly going to human, and we're going to have these moments. So, my best advice to all you single people out there who who are still in the playing field and all of that stuff is, if you're gonna have a moment, at least try to make sure that moment is with somebody of a similar frequency to you. At least try your best. I know that's not always going to be the case, because most people who are on a spiritual frequency don't view sex in that lustful format, but do your best to make sure it is somewhere near an energetic match for you, so you don't swap energies with somebody who's got a lower frequency than you, and it causes you to potentially experience or higher frequency. Yes, Diana, for sure. um but it is sacred. It should be viewed as such. That doesn't mean we can't express ourselves sexually. Okay, that doesn't mean we can't talk about this, and it doesn't mean that we have to make this topic taboo. This has to be something that's spoken about in our conscious collective. um what I will say is this: if you're going down a very disciplinary path, like if you want to go through semen retention, or if you want to go through celibacy, or you want to take it to either of those extremes, the best thing I can tell you to do is to start slowly. Okay, don't we're dealing with a very divine and primal aspect of human nature. Okay, uh, to completely shut that off within ourselves, that's a very complicated and a very hard process to do that. And that takes time. And it's not really even a matter of shutting it off, it's the disciplinary factor with it. And that's going to take time for you to cultivate that. You know what I mean? So if you're going to go down the road of celibacy, if you're going to go down the road of semen retention, my best advice to you is to give yourself grace, start slowly. Okay, like I said, maybe do 7 days retention, 1 day release, and work with that for a little bit. And then maybe when you get that down, move it up to 10 days, 2 weeks of retention, 1 day release, and continue to kind of move forward. Okay, when we come to these massive changes in our lifestyle, especially when it comes to heavy disciplines like semen retention and celibacy, you have to give yourself grace. You are a human being. Okay. And like I said, we're dealing with a very divine / primal nature that exists within us all. You have the divine aspect of sex, which yes, is that spiritual union, but then you also have that primal nature of it all, reproduction, things like that, even pleasure. Okay, so that's what I said, guys. You are working on disciplining a very ingrained aspect of our human nature. Okay, so give yourself grace on that. The other thing that I want to say also as well is, choose what you feel is right for you. You're going to have so many people on the internet in our conscious collective that are going to be like, like I said, my way's the right way, or this way's the right way. And if you're not doing it this way, then you're falling from grace, or this, and this. Like I said, politely tell those people to can it. Okay, because they are not you. They are not in your life. They are not in your life circumstances. Okay, they're not in any realm of anything that has to do with you. So you choose what's right for you in this. Um, And nonetheless, guys, the best thing I can say too is understand that this is a divine act. This is sacred. Utilize this energy for the right purposes. So that's kind of my 2 cents on this. We will be doing a part 2. I am going to edit this into a part 1 as soon as we get done. But nonetheless, guys, thank you for joining me here. Sorry, I'm a little bit exhausted and I'm a little bit at a loss for words. Work has been a little bit crazy this week. The energies have been very interesting this week also. But nonetheless, I will be back next Wednesday with Angel Wings. Jamie Jacobson. Jamie, I will be reaching out to you this weekend to get everything set up. Jamie is a highly conductive human being, and we're going to be touching on highly conductive human beings. She can actually light up lights with her bare hands and feet, and she has video evidence to prove this. So this is actually really interesting to me because I myself am a highly conductive human too, although I'm not doing this just yet. But we will be having her on to discuss how she figured this out about herself and her spiritual evolution as well that led her to this understanding. And then other than that, guys, I want to wish you all a very good evening. Thanks for hanging in there with me tonight. And you know what I always say, stay safe, stay free, and most importantly, stay sovereign. You guys have a good one. Take care.